mean, couldn't you say that at the end of the day, there'll be three classifications of political reaction? There'll be some governments that resist reality and they collapse. And maybe they collapse into civil war, or they just collapse into chaos. And there'll be some governments that fight, resist, struggle, and eventually reconfigure themselves after great deals of pain and agony. And there'll be some governments that look at the world and they transform themselves in an agile fashion. And maybe they don't get through without stress, but they morph into something different and accommodate the world. Right? What happens if a small country, the best example would be, what if a small country that still has a currency starts printing the currency to buy Bitcoin? The first one, right? There's a little bit of room, right? Like what if UAE, right? Or Saudi Arabia, what if they were to go and just start buying Bitcoin with their currency? Like how long could, I mean, in theory, couldn't you, if you ran a country like Emirates, couldn't you go ahead and buy billions, 2, 3, 5, 10 billion of this before anybody noticed, and it might never weaken your currency, right?
Yeah, they've got an enormous amount of excess capital.
Right?
Yeah, they're hosting World Cups that, cost them a lot of money. They could be buying Bitcoin and watching the World Cup on TV.
Like a good model to consider is Norway and Sweden and other sovereign wealth funds, right? You've got regressive, you've got Cuba and Venezuela, right? And North Korea, and they're not really good at embracing property rights. And then you've got the middle of the road conventional, and their central banks are holding, US sovereign debt or gold, but mainly just sovereign debt. And then you've got progressive nations, and Norway is one. Norway's got a massive equity portfolio, right? Switzerland's got a massive, they didn't use gold. They actually used big tech as a store of value. KSA and UAE, in fact, all of the Middle Eastern countries, they generally have sovereign wealth funds that are holding diversified portfolios of property, including equity. They own banks, they own big tech. Sometimes they own like tons of property, real estate, REITs, not to mention commodities, right? Oil rights, like mineral rights and the like. So I think generally the world is a more complicated place than we are able to predict, right? Like you're trying to predict what the market will do. And isn't the whole basis of Austrian economics, right? That nobody can really predict the market, No.
Yeah, it's human action at the end of the day.
And so everybody has free will, right? Like Microstrategy can do what it did. Like Microstrategy stock was 120, and then we flipped and it's up by a factor of 5. And what did we do? We basically bought some Bitcoin and then we started issuing stock to buy Bitcoin. Isn't that the same as a country buys some Bitcoin and starts issuing currency to buy Bitcoin?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So
I guess it's slightly different because it devalues the currency when you issue more of it. But if you back it with Bitcoin,
it isn't slightly different, because when you issue stock, you devalue the stock, right? If you're issuing equity, you're diluting the equity. And if you issue currency, you're diluting the currency. But
the equity is a claim on the cash flows of the company.
And the currency is a claim on the assets of the bank that issued the currency.
If it is redeemable if it's redeemable in gold or Bitcoin, then yeah. So that's what they got to do. They have to go on a Bitcoin standard.
Well, let's be extreme, right? What happens if UAE buys $10 billion of Bitcoin and the price of Bitcoin then increases by a factor of 20? And next thing you know, they've got $200 billion worth of Bitcoin, and everybody in the world knows they've got $200 billion worth of Bitcoin.
Well, the first thing that's going to happen is the Saudis are going to want to buy more then.
Yeah. So I think the point here really is, you can spend a lot of time fantasizing about how you never want any banks to buy Bitcoin, and you never want any companies to buy Bitcoin, and you never want any governments to buy Bitcoin. And since they're not going to ever buy any Bitcoin, you're the enemy of the banks and the companies and the government, right?
Yeah.
Or, right, and you see that narrative, right? Like, right, banks are the enemy of Bitcoin, companies are the enemy of Bitcoin, not your keys, not your coin, the government's the enemy of Bitcoin. But the other possibility, which just turns the entire thing on its head, is how would you feel if you woke up tomorrow and you found out that Goldman Sachs did buy $10 billion of Bitcoin and UAE bought 20 billion of Bitcoin? Would you be angry? By the way, your
No.
Bitcoin would be trading at like $4 million of Bitcoin. And you could be angry and say, no, give that back to us. I want to go back to $50,000 Bitcoin. Look, if institutions weren't involved in Bitcoin, Bitcoin would be trading at like 8,000 right now. Right? If you look at, the last 18 months. So you could we could unwind that and you go back to $8,000 Bitcoin, or you can move forward, but it's just a taste. So, what's my big point here? It's like nobody can predict how the future will evolve, except to make this one observation. People are generally rational and they take the path of least resistance. And so at some point, it's possible that someone's going to buy the Bitcoin, not because they agree that with your most extreme vision of no governments and no companies and living together peacefully in one world currency. Maybe that's not why they're going to do it. Maybe they just want the money, right?
Yeah, for sure. Bitcoin is far more popular than anarchist ideology. That's for sure. I totally
so when that
understand
happens,
that.
Right? When that happens, then the entire thing is going to tilt a different direction. Inconceivable, right?
Yeah.
You just don't even know which direction it's going to go, but the world is going to find its way forward. And like when the lockdowns took place, right? There's this phrase, life finds a way, right? Like the Jurassic Park phrase. When the lockdowns took place, we shut down cruise lines and we shut down airlines and we shut down theme parks and we shut down movie theaters. And if you're an investor in the Disney Corporation, you could look at the Disney Corporation and you could say, well, they're in cruise lines. Oh, and hotels, airlines, cruise lines, theaters, everything shut down. And if you're an analyst, you could say, well, it's pretty obvious. The stock is impaired. The company is impaired. I should just dump my stock, or I should short the stock. But at the end of the day, someone went on television and said, how's Disney going to react? And Disney went on television and said, we're just going to do Disney Plus streaming. And they said, well, how many customers do you have? Like right now, at the time of the lockdown, they were like the 9th largest, non-launch streaming service. And it would have accounted for 0.1% of their revenue or 1% of their revenue and minus nothing of their profit. And you could just focus on that narrative, or you get on TV and say, yeah, well, we think by the year 2025, we're going to actually be growing 100% year over year. And everybody said, this is great. They've got a plan. Stock hit an all-time high.
Yeah.
And so, the point really is, are you going to bet on everybody to lose and not come up with the right strategy? Or what are the odds that they're just going to find a strategy which is a winning strategy and a winning way to accommodate? Right? I mean, nobody from Disney got on television and said, streaming video will never replace the theme parks. It will never replace, the movie experience. We believe families need to come together in our hotels and be in our, Disney World rides. I mean, they didn't spend a lot of time, wallowing in self-pity and dealing with that reality. They just completely changed the focus, talk about the new thing, and move forward. So I think that everybody loves a winner,
Yeah.
and Bitcoin's a winner. And the winning strategy is let everybody win with us, right? Like,
Yes, definitely.
everybody can win with us. I don't care what government, can governments win? Yes, all of them. Even the ones I don't like, even the ones I don't like, right? Can companies win? All of them. Can the banks win? Yeah, sure they can. I don't,
Yeah.
you don't like that company because they censor this thing. No, they could still win. Like, at the end of the day, if everybody wins with you and you have the most extreme values, like multi-sig cold storage with, guns in a cabin and your own source of water and your own food supply, you're still going to be better off, right?
That's true.
Your Bitcoin's still going to be worth 10 million of Bitcoin.
Yeah, my view on all of this is to tell people that Bitcoin's permissionless, and that includes that it's complete. You can't stop people from selling IOUs for Bitcoin. People think about it as if we need to stop people from buying Bitcoin IOUs. Well, no, it's Bitcoin holders who are selling IOUs, and there's nothing you can do about it. And I think, generally as a libertarian-leaning anarchist, I don't get upset at things that are peaceful. I can't oppose people doing peaceful things that don't hurt others.